Welcome back to another episode on Landscaping Podcast, powered by Landscaping Unlimited. As always, we've got your hosts, Shay Brickhouse and Zachary Small. And today, we're going into the nuts and bolts of landscaping. We're going to talk about what might be considered a simple action, which is going out and mowing your lawn. But as you can see, as we dive into this, it's a lot deeper than that. And Shay's going to dive into it. This is well up his wheelhouse. He has mowed way more lawns than almost anybody I know. And so we're going to talk about how he's maintained yards throughout the years, what he does, but most importantly, we're going to be breaking this into a 2-segment podcast. Not necessarily back to back, but this one is going to be dedicated to homeowners. The next one's going to go into what the professionals need to be doing when they are mowing lawns. And on that one, we'll go both commercial and residential. This one is just residential. This is just for the individual who's going to be walking outside their house, jumping in the mower, and then attacking their lawn. Maybe looking for a little bit of guidance or feedback from a professional on how to best take care of that property. And I'll tell you right now, I learned quite a few things myself. I thought I knew everything, hop on a zero turn, cut the grass, and I realized there were a lot more steps I could have taken to better take care of my property and better set it up for success by understanding what it needed from me. I didn't, and so I learned a lot. My lawn is doing a lot better. So now we're going to talk into the average homeowner just wants to jump and mow their lawn better. Where do they start?
Well, first they got to have a lawnmower. That is step number one. I mean, I think we could really go in depth with this. We're going to try not to go too deep into it because I don't think anyone wants a 3-hour podcast.
The next one combined with this one, I think will be the ultimate blend of podcasts on mowing a lawn.
Yeah. But you know, as a residential homeowner, mowing your own lawn, you know, it comes down to what's your overall goal and how well or how nice do you want your lawn to look. You know, if you have Bermuda and you want that crisp, clean cut where the blades don't look kind of tinged brown at the top right after you get done, you know, finish cutting, then you're going to want to invest in a real mower. So now we're talking about the equipment. You know, not a rotary mower, a real mower. Like you see in the old days and Forrest Gump's pushing and the blast.
You're talking like the 6 blades?
Yep.
Nice.
So
my grandmother had one of those. That's how I started mowing lawns.
Yep. But I mean, you don't have to push them. You can also, you know, they have self-propelled ones now. So, but I mean, you want to have good equipment if you want a nice lawn. And that's kind of the first step is getting the equipment that you need based upon what your expectations are on your lawn and how nice you want it to look. A rotary mower does fine on Centipede or St. Augustine, but a real fine blade that's real thick like Bermuda and Zoysia, you could go to a real mower and get a nice crisp cut, and it would make your lawn look a lot better. So I think that's the start to that.
What's the cutoff, would you say? I mean, obviously, if you have nothing going on in your day, you can spend 12 hours using a rotary. On a self-propelled rotary mower, what do you think is a fair, is it a 1/4 acre lawn? Is it a 1/2 acre lawn? Like, where do you see people drop off and say it's time to get a riding mower?
You mean like a push mower versus riding mower?
Yes.
Well, I think that depends on how lazy you are. I don't think it's much of a size. I mean, you know, obviously you don't need a big 60-inch riding lawnmower if you've got, you know, 2,000-3,000 square feet of turf. There's no sense in having a riding lawnmower for something that's kind of small.
Yeah.
Maybe you could find, I'm going to reference Hustler and all this because, well, that's what we use. And
Shout out to
that's
Hustler.
what we sell. But like the Hustler Dash, you know, it's a real small lawnmower. Mm-hmm. So that would be like the step up from a push mower and the small and would be suitable for a very small, couple thousand square feet to, you know, 1/4 acre or something like that. That would be fine. But then again, it also comes down to your budget, how much grass you have, how much you want to spend, and, you know, how luxurious do you want your lawnmower to be? Because you can buy a commercial mower and only mow a 1/2 acre. Totally up to you. But I think the cutoff is you as a person.
Well, I think that points something out that we can kind of break this conversation into. Let's talk about the homeowner who has a lawn that they want to use a push mower on.
Yep.
What's the best way for them to go out and attack that push mower for the not a small yard, but a smaller yard that's appropriate for a push mower? What's the pattern? What's the beginning from when you're like, all right, you're a push mower person, and next we'll talk about the person who jumps in their riding mower, and then talk about how they can approach and attack it.
Yeah.
And it might be the same. I really don't know.
Yeah. So I love push mowed lawns. We've got a few lawns in one of the communities we maintain. We're required to push mow them. And to me, they look the prettiest because the grass isn't getting trampled on. You don't get these wear patterns from the heavier lawnmowers. The push mower is lighter. I love a push mowed lawn. And then also, you're creating a little bit healthier lawn because you're bagging as you go while leaving a few clippings. And so you've got some thatch, but you're not leaving too much thatch. And so therefore, you're allowing your grass to breathe a little better. So there's some benefits to push mowing. One of the benefits is, as the homeowner, you're going to get some exercise, especially if it's not a self-propelled push mower. So that's a benefit for you physically. And then as your lawn goes, you're going to be having those nice, pretty, crisp stripes, and a lot of them because the mower's smaller. And so you're going to have these nice tight stripes versus a really long stripe like you would get with a big commercial mower.
Mm-hmm. So when they're going out to mow their lawn, they've got to go around flower beds. They might want the nice stripe across the middle. Maybe they want the opposing stripes to get that plaid look. How do you approach it when you're using a push mower and you're going near a flower bed? Are you trying to go like along the edge of it so that the clippings are shooting out and they're not shooting in?
Yeah.
What's the best tactic here?
Yeah, so push mower, some of them have side discharge, some rear discharge, some go into a bagger. If it's a side discharge push mower, then you're going to want to go around the perimeter a couple times and make sure that the grass is blowing in and away from the flower bed or your sidewalk or your driveway. With a push mower, you can kind of manipulate that some, and so you don't always have to do those outer stripes. Sometimes you can push the lawnmower onto the driveway and lift it up and keep that grass from making a mess. But you certainly don't want to be blowing grass clippings into your flower beds, because if your grass has seed headed, then you're blowing seed heads into your flower beds where you don't want grass to grow. And so you want to eliminate that as much as you can. Then obviously you want to keep that push mower line as straight as possible. If you get out there looking like you're trying to draw circles in the yard and do some graffiti, then that's the look you're going to get. But if you're looking for the nice, pretty striped lawn, that's not the way to do it. So yeah, starting with a perimeter swipe, blowing everything in, and then picking a straight line and getting you one straight line, and then working, alternating directions from that line will give you a nice, pretty straight stripe. And the way you get a stripe is by laying the grass blades over, and it's the way the sun hits that grass blade is what actually gives you the stripe. So if you're going, for example, if you're heading north in your yard with one stripe, directly beside it, you want to head south, and then alternate that direction as you go across the lawn. The next time you mow, you'll want to change that direction, and then you can get the checkerboard. And then you want to change it again, you can get the 45 degree, then do it again. And pretty much as you're driving past the lawn over like a 4-week period, you can get a line or a stripe anywhere in that lawn by looking at it from just about any direction. And that's what you get, that uniformity over time. And after the end of the season, no matter where you look at, aerial photo, your lawn got these perfect diamonds and checkerboards, and the stripes look great.
So your stripe has nothing to do with the depth of the cut. It's about the angle and direction of the cut.
Yes and no. So if you cut the grass really short, you don't have any of the grass blade to lay over. And so if you cut the grass a little bit taller, then you have some grass blade to lay over. Another key note to this is some grasses stripe well and some don't. Centipede doesn't really stripe the greatest if people cut it at like 2 inches, which is what down here where we live, people love to mow it to the dirt. And so it doesn't stripe very well because there's not a whole lot of grass blade to lean over. If you cut it around the 3.5, then you're getting some height to the blade. And so you actually have a grass blade to lay over, and you have something to stripe. Bermuda's kind of on the same thing. Certain types of Bermuda grow real dense together. And so the blades are super fine. And so unless you have a roller kit, sometimes the Bermuda doesn't lay over unless you let it get kind of shaggy. It's a desired look sometimes. Some people don't like it that way. And the only downside to having a really, really tall Bermuda is that it's hard to get it back to a fine cut without completely just demolishing the yard for 2 or 3 cuts, because you're cutting off all of the green growth, and so it's going to be brown, and then you got to let it kind of regenerate itself back up, which it will, because Bermuda is extremely hardy, but you're going to have to live with that for a week or 2.
So one of the things I brought up in the beginning is something I didn't know, and we were talking about it before we hit record, and that was, I thought when I had to mow my lawn, it was like get it as low as possible without like scalping. And I realized like I'd be done with it, and I'm like, oh, that's a very tight looking lawn, but it was never like as lush as like when you see like a nice lush property. And you had explained to me how the canopy protects the soil, protects the blades. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because there might be homeowners who are mowing thinking what I thought, because nobody had told me. And so like go as low as possible. Always go as low as possible. It extends, until your next cut. But in all reality, you're not getting the product you want because you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, in general rules, you should never cut more than 1/3 of your grass blade, whether that's Bermuda, zoysia, centipede, St. Augustine, bent grass, I mean, fescue, pretty much you name it, whatever it is, you should never be cutting more than 1/3 of your grass blade. And the main reason for that is you're cutting off a large portion of the blade, and therefore you're building a ton of thatch that's really, really going to be dense and heavy in there. And then two, the plant's going to require photosynthesis to basically convert energy for itself to live. And so if you're cutting off all of the grass blade, well, that's a majority of the leaf that it needed for photosynthesis. I mean, the best way I can think about that is a way of describing it is, you've got two arms and you're trying to carry something and then you cut both your arms off. Well, you can't carry what it is you're trying to pick up because you have no arms. And the same way is with your grass. Your grass can't convert energy if you just cut everything off that it needed to carry the energy to its root system. And so that's a good way of remembering that.
So when you had first explained that to me, talking about the canopy and everything, I thought about trees. I was like, basically what I was doing was like chopping off from where the branches start to come out, leaves up, you're cutting that off. And so you're going to use a bunch of like very tall stumps. And I was like, oh, dude, it just clicked at that point. And so I raised the level and grass was greener. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
And
yeah.
So I learned something there.
Also, creates a microclimate. So if you've got a taller canopy, if you will, in your lawn, then you're shading the soil, which means that you're creating the soil temps to be a little cooler. So as the summer months come, July and August here in Eastern North Carolina, what we call the dog days of summer, where we're getting heat indexes in the 110, 104, and UV. The UV rays that day are like through the roof. You get a suntan by 9 a.m. The grass is stressing. It's stressed out. If you leave that canopy long, the soil temps drop a little bit, therefore making it a little easier on the root structure of that plant. Whereas if you cut it all the way down, you've just went out there in the middle of the summer and killed your grass by cutting it so low, and then you've just increased the soil temp. So now when it's trying to revive itself, it's struggling because the soil temps are going up. So it's a kind of you have to take care of it on multiple aspects, and you don't want to overcomplicate cutting your lawn.
So we spoke about the perimeter, we spoke about how to get the stripes, and then we spoke about the proper level for pushing. Now let's talk about the riding mower. I mean, is this just like copy paste? Do your perimeter,
for the most part, yep.
Hit it over. So when it comes to maintaining the lawn, whether you're pushing or riding, same strategy, same approach to that lawn.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, a riding lawnmower's got a little more power than a push mower. And so if you've got a 60-inch commercial mower, mowing a little bit larger area around some parking lots or something like that, or your driveway, you want to make sure that you're blowing at least 2 swipes in, because when you turn around to make your stripe and the area that you need to turn the mower in, when you turn, if you don't have a block-off chute or you haven't purchased one yet, then that grass is going to blow across that area and then end up in the parking lot or your flower bed that you're going to have to clean up or clean out. And if you mow that 2 stripes around, then that gives you a little bit of room to turn your lawnmower around without the grass clippings that you're cutting going into that area. So it's kind of like a buffer area for you to spread grass.
So I'm going to use my property as an example here. On one side of my property, I've got a row of trees, and they're roughly 8, maybe 10 feet separated with the tall, like green giants almost, and there's a few bushes in there that are different variety that you would know the Latin name of, and I don't. But when you approach a property like that, would you go around the tree, go around all those trees first, or would you go down the side of one, up the side of the other one to keep it straight, and then go between them and do the loop? Like, how would you approach a property that, let's say, they've got a bunch of trees like that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got grass growing up to the tree trunk, then my rule of thumb is if I'm going around the perimeter and the lawnmower deck will fit between it and what I'm edging against, which would be against my left side of the lawnmower, because that's the edging side, then if it fits, then I would continue going through, and then on the next pass, I would make my circle around that tree. I wouldn't go out of my way to edge something until it ends up being in my path. And the reason for that is at the end, I don't want any unwanted tracks in the lawn. So if you're trying to make a nice pretty stripe and there's a tree in the middle, well, as I'm striping, if I can get by it without blowing grass in it, then I do not turn the mower away from that stripe until I get to that area to where part of the deck would cross that flower bed. And then I deviate and I'll edge it with the left side, circle around it, come back to the other side, continue my stripe.
Yes. And then the last question I had, what is your reference when you're trying to keep your line straight? For me, it's one of the wheels. I'd overlap a wheel over a line and always the same wheel, same line.
Yep.
And that's how I'd know I was at least staying straight. Even if it was crooked, it was uniformly crooked.
Yeah.
So is that universal, or like what do you use when you're trying
Yep.
to make sure you keep it nice and tight?
So to start with, the first stripe is always the hardest because you want to make it straight. 'Cause that's the one you're going off of. Me personally, when we're mowing large fields, then what I use is I pick an area across the field that I line up with, and that is my reference point. For example, a particular tree or a fence post or something of that nature. I call it the old farmer's technique. When they were cutting rows way before GPS, they'd look all the way across the field and they wouldn't move their head. They would steer right towards that item until they got there, and that's how they would get a straight row. And then after that, they work off that row. Same way when I cut lawns on big fields, if I don't have a straight parking lot to get me my first line next to, that's what I do. I pick something all the way across. Now after that, depends on the mower I'm with. If it's a 60-inch lawnmower, most of the time that front wheel just does stick inside the deck. And so the outside of that left wheel, I would line up with my cut line, and that's what would keep me my next row and give me just a little bit of overlap. Not a whole lot, maybe 3 inches or so. If you had a whole bunch of overlap, well, what was the point of buying a 60-inch deck? You're only using 48 inches of it. Same thing when you go to a 72, a 72-inch deck, a lot more sticks out the left side of the deck. So if you're using that wheel, well, essentially you've just got a 60-inch deck. So why'd you buy the 72? So you really have to look at the deck and use the edge of the deck, leaving just a little bit of overhang so that you don't miss anything if it's bumpy. And that's how you get a nice clean line with maximum efficiency on your deck. If you're using a push mower, pretty much you can use the front wheels, line that front wheel right up on what you just mowed, and almost always a push mower will overlap perfect.
All right, like I said, dive right into it. This is the first of 2 podcast episodes focused on the mowing of the lawn. The next one, we're going to go a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more in depth on this. We're going from nuts and bolts of checking the equipment before you use it, to sitting on that mower, cruising around, to the aftercare that comes in for you to take care of it for the next time you're going to use it. So if you enjoyed this, if you have any questions, or if there's anything we didn't cover, a question that you have, or if you choose to go out there and change your approach and something worked, hit us up, let us know. We look forward to hearing about it. We'll answer any questions you guys might have. But this has been another episode on Landscaping Podcast, powered by Landscaping Limited. Hope you have a great day.